The Zeltharian command ship Dominion's edge hung in the void like a metallic predator, its hull gleaming with the cold light of distant stars. Admiral Kethvar studied the holographic display before him. His forearms crossed in contemplation. The damaged human vessel floating 3 kilometers ahead looked pathetic. Hull breaches sealed with crude patches. Engines dark. Life support flickering weakly. Scans confirm it, Admiral. Reported as tactical officer, Lieutenant Vexme. The ship is nearly dead in space. Hull integrity at 40%. Minimal energy signatures. We're detecting approximately 12 life forms aboard. Kethvar's mandibles clicked with satisfaction. For months, the Zeltharian Empire had been tracking human expansion across this sector. These bipedal mammals had appeared seemingly from nowhere, establishing colonies with disturbing efficiency. Their technology was primitive by Zeltharian standards, but their unpredictability made them dangerous. This crippled vessel represented a perfect opportunity. Any distress signals? Kethvar asked. None, sir. They appear to be maintaining communication silence. The Admiral's secondary eyes focused on the human ship's designation painted on its hull, UES Prometheus. It was a cargo vessel, unremarkable except for its current vulnerability. Around the Dominion's edge, 7 other Zeltharian warships maintained formation, their weapons trained on the disabled craft. Boarding teams. Prepare for capture operations, Kethvar commanded. I want that ship's crew alive. Intelligence Division is very interested in human psychology and tactics. As the boarding shuttles launched, Kethvar allowed himself a moment of professional satisfaction. The humans had proven surprisingly resilient in previous encounters, but this would be different. This time, they had nowhere to run. Aboard the Prometheus, Captain Sarachin watched the alien shuttle's approach on her flickering display. Her ship's bridge was a maze of exposed wiring and jury rig systems. Emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red shadows. Around her, 11 other crew members worked frantically at their stations, their faces grim with determination. Ma'am, they're going to dock at airlocks 2 and 7, reported her tactical officer, Lieutenant Torres. 8 minutes until contact. Chin nodded, her fingers drumming against her command chair. The Prometheus wasn't really a cargo vessel. It was a deep reconnaissance ship disguised as civilian transport. Her crew weren't merchants. They were specialists in electronic warfare, quantum computing, and advanced weapon systems. The cargo in their holds wasn't trade goods. It was experimental military technology that absolutely could not fall into alien hands. Status on the Lazarus Protocol? She asked quietly. Chief Engineer Williams looked up from his console, sweat beading on his forehead. Ready to initialize on your command. Captain. But once we activate it, there's no going back. Chin understood. The Lazarus Protocol was humanity's most classified contingency plan, a way to ensure that valuable intelligence never fell into enemy hands, regardless of the cost. It was named after the biblical figure who rose from the dead, but the irony wasn't lost on her crew. This resurrection would be their last act. Captain, called her communications officer. We're receiving a transmission from the alien command ship. Put it through. The main screen flickered to life, showing Admiral Kethvar's imposing form. His voice resonated to the bridge's speakers, translated by the ship's AI. Human vessel, you are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender immediately, and you will not be harmed. Resist, and we will take your ship by force. Chun stood slowly, straightening her uniform. Admiral, I'm Captain Sarachin of the United Earthship Prometheus. We're a civilian cargo vessel with no military value. We request safe passage to continue our mission. Kethvar's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. Your deception is transparent, human. We know this vessel carries military significance. You have 2 minutes to surrender. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Chin looked at each of her crew members, seeing the same resolve in their eyes that she felt in her heart. They had all volunteered for this mission, knowing it might be one way. All hands, this is a captain, she announced over the ship's intercom. We are about to be boarded by hostile forces. Each of you swore an oath to protect humanity's secrets. Today we honor that oath. Through the hull, They could hear the alien shuttles docking. The sound of cutting tools echoed through the corridors as the boarders began forcing their way through the airlocks. Chen's hand moved to a small control panel beside her chair, her thumb hovering over a single red button. "Remember," she said to her crew, "we're not just dying today. We're teaching them what happens when they underestimate humanity." The first alien boot stepped onto the Prometheus, and Captain Chen smiled grimly. The real battle was about to begin. The Zeltharian boarding team moved through the Prometheus with practiced efficiency, their powered armor clanking against the metal floors. Commander Zektal led the assault, his squad's weapons scanning for threats. The human ship seemed even more damaged from the inside. Flickering lights, the acrid smell of burned electronics, and the constant groaning of stressed metal. "Resistance minimal," Zektal reported to the Dominion's edge. "These humans appear to be non-combatants. We're encountering mostly engineers and technicians." What he didn't report was how wrong everything felt. The humans weren't cowering as expected. Instead, they worked at their stations with an almost manic intensity, as if racing against time. Their eyes held something that made even his hardened warriors uncomfortable, a mixture of fear and determination that spoke of impending sacrifice. On the bridge, Captain Chen watched her crew's final preparations. Williams had his hands deep in the ship's quantum core, making last-minute adjustments to the Lazarus protocol. Torres was downloading every scrap of data from their tactical computers, preparing to upload it to a secure human network through quantum entanglement. "Boarders are 3 decks down," Torres reported. "They're taking prisoners but not harming anyone." "They want us alive for interrogation," Chen replied. "That gives us time." The elevator doors at the rear of the bridge suddenly hissed open. 3 Zeltharian soldiers emerged, their weapons raised. Commander Zektal's voice boomed from his armor speakers. "Surrender immediately. You are now prisoners of the Zeltharian Empire." Chen raised her hand slowly, but kept her thumb near the activation button. "Commander, I'm Captain Chen. I need to speak with your admiral." Zektal's helmet tilted slightly. "The admiral will speak with you aboard our vessel. Move away from your stations." "I'm afraid I can't do that," Chen said calmly. "You see, this isn't really a cargo ship." Before Zektal could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the alien fleet. Aboard the Dominion's edge, Admiral Kefvar's tactical display exploded with warnings. The human ship's energy signature was spiking dramatically, climbing far beyond what their initial scans had indicated possible. "What's happening?" Kefvar demanded. "Admiral, the human vessel is experiencing a massive power surge," Vexmi reported, her voice tight with concern. "Energy levels are increasing exponentially. It's not a reactor failure. It's deliberate." Through the quantum entanglement link, Torres's data upload completed. Every piece of intelligence the Prometheus had gathered about Zeltharian fleet movements, technology, and tactics was now safely transmitted to Earth Command. The aliens would learn nothing from their computers. "Sir," Williams called out, his voice steady despite the Zeltharian weapons trained on him, "Lazarus protocol is fully charged and ready." Chen looked at Zektal, who seemed frozen by the rapidly changing situation. "Commander, I need you to listen very carefully. This ship contains an experimental human defense system. In exactly 90 seconds, it will activate. You need to evacuate your teams immediately." "You're bluffing," Zektal growled, but his voice carried uncertainty. "Am I?" Chen asked. "Look at your energy readings. Does this look like a bluff?" Aboard the Dominion's edge, panic was spreading through the bridge crew. The human ship's power levels had reached impossible heights, and their scientists couldn't explain the readings. The energy signature was unlike anything in their databases. "Admiral," the science officer called out, "we're detecting massive gravitational distortions around the human vessel. Whatever they're doing, it's affecting space-time itself." Kefvar's mind raced. The humans had seemed primitive, but this display of technology was beyond Zeltharian capabilities. "Get our boarding teams out of there. Now." "Sir, Commander Zektal isn't responding to evacuation orders," Vexmi reported. On the Prometheus, Zektal was indeed not responding to his ship's frantic calls. He was staring at Captain Chen, finally understanding the terrible truth. This wasn't a cargo vessel. It wasn't even a normal warship. It was something far more dangerous. A trap. "What is this ship?" he demanded. Chen's smile was sad but proud. "It's a message, Commander. A message about what happens when you threaten humanity." The countdown on Williams's console reached 30 seconds. Throughout the Prometheus, the remaining crew members had gathered on the bridge, facing their fate together. They weren't crying or praying. They were standing at attention, ready to deliver humanity's response to alien aggression. "Captain," Torres called out, "Earth Command confirms receipt of all intelligence data. Mission accomplished." "Thank you, Lieutenant." Chun turned to address the Zeltharian soldiers. "Commander, you have 15 seconds to evacuate your teams. I strongly recommend you do so." Zekto finally overcame his paralysis. "All teams, emergency evacuation. Move now." He grabbed his communications device, shouting orders to his scattered soldiers throughout the ship. But 15 seconds wasn't enough time. Captain Chen's thumb pressed down on the activation button, and the Lazarus protocol engaged. The last thing she saw was the shocked face of Commander Zekto as reality itself began to bend around them. The Prometheus wasn't just carrying experimental technology, it was experimental technology. The ship began to fold in on itself, taking everything within a 3-kilometer radius along for the ride. The universe screamed. Space-time contracted around Prometheus like a closing fist, dragging matter and energy into a control collapse that defied every law of physics the Zeltharians understood. Admiral Ketvar watched in horror as 3 of his escort vessels were caught in the expanding distortion field, their hulls stretching and compressing like taffy before vanishing into the swirling vortex. "Gravitational shear at critical levels," his science officer reported, her voice cracking with terror. "The space-time metric is collapsing. We need to retreat immediately. All ships, emergency jump to hyperspace." Ketvar commanded. "Execute now." 4 of his remaining vessels managed to escape, their hyperspace drives engaging just before the distortion field reached them. But the Dominion's Edge and its sister ship Eternal Conquest were too close. The gravitational effects were interfering with their jump calculations, trapping them in normal space as the human weapon continued its impossible work. Aboard the dying Prometheus, Captain Chun felt the deck beneath her feet beginning to phase in and out of existence. The Lazarus protocol wasn't just destroying the ship. It was creating a localized breakdown in reality itself. Her crew stood firm even as their bodies began to shimmer and fade, their molecular structure caught between dimensions. "Captain," Williams called out, his voice echoing strangely as his form flickered, "the quantum cascade is holding steady. We're achieving optimal dimensional displacement." Commander Zektal and his boarding team found themselves trapped in a nightmare. The corridor they had entered through no longer existed. It had been replaced by a swirling mass of stars and darkness. His soldiers were firing their weapons at shadows that moved independently of their owners, their energy bolts disappearing into folds of space that led nowhere. "Base Command, this is Zektal." He called desperately into his communicator. "We need immediate extraction. The human ship is some kind of spatial anomaly generator." Static answered him. The quantum distortion was interfering with all forms of communication. Through the chaos, Chen's voice reached him, somehow clear despite the reality storm raging around them. "Commander, your people have stumbled into something they don't understand. This isn't just a weapon, it's a doorway." "Doorway to what?" Zektal demanded, his voice tight with fear. "To the truth about humanity," Chen replied. "We're not the primitive species you thought we were. We're the species that learned to weaponize spacetime itself, because we had to. Because the universe is full of predators like you." The Prometheus completed its dimensional fold, and suddenly the swirling vortex began to invert. Instead of collapsing inward, it started expanding outward, carrying with it something that made Ketvar's blood run cold. The human ship was emerging from the distortion field, but it wasn't the same vessel that had entered. The Prometheus now gleamed with an otherworldly light, its hull seamlessly repaired and covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. It was larger than before. Its mass somehow increased despite the laws of conservation, and it was moving with purpose, accelerating toward the Dominion's edge at impossible speeds. "Energy readings are off the charts," Vexmi reported, her forearms trembling as she worked her console. "That ship is generating more power than our entire fleet combined. How is that possible?" Kethvar demanded. "Admiral, I don't think that ship is entirely in our dimension anymore," the science officer replied. "It's drawing energy from somewhere else." The transformed Prometheus came to a stop directly in front of the Dominion's edge, and Captain Chen's face appeared on the main screen. But it wasn't quite the same face that had spoken to them before. Her eyes held depths that seemed to contain entire galaxies, and her smile carried the weight of cosmic knowledge. "Admiral Kethvar," she said, her voice resonating with harmonics that bypassed their translation systems and spoke directly to their minds. "You wanted to capture human technology. Congratulations. You've succeeded beyond your wildest dreams." "What have you done?" Kethvar whispered. "We've shown you what happens when you corner a species that refuse to accept the limitations of three-dimensional space," Chen replied. "The Lazarus Protocol doesn't just destroy, it transcends. Every human ship is equipped with quantum entanglement links to our dimensional research stations. When we activate the protocol, we don't just die, we become something more." Through the bridge viewports, Kethvar could see movement within the Prometheus. The crew members he had watched die were moving through the ship, but they were walking through walls, their forms existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. They were still human, but they had become something that his species science couldn't categorize. "Your boarding teams are safe," Chin continued. "They're experiencing something new, existence beyond the traditional constraints of matter and energy. They're learning what it means to be truly alive." On the bridge of the Prometheus, Commander Zektal found himself able to see through the ship's hull into the depths of space. His soldiers were no longer wearing their armor. They didn't need it. The transformed vessel was sustaining them with energy drawn from parallel dimensions, showing them vistas of reality that no Zeltharian had ever imagined. "This is impossible," he breathed. "No," Captain Chin said, turning to face him. "This is human." The Prometheus began to move again, but this time it was heading directly for the Zeltharian command center 3 light years away. And somehow, impossibly, it was moving faster than light without using hyperspace, folding the distance between points like origami. The hunt was about to become the hunted. The Zeltharian High Command Center orbited the gas giant Vorthak like an artificial moon, its crystalline structure gleaming with the light of 3 suns. Within its halls, Supreme Commander Thexera received Admiral Kethvar's frantic transmission with growing disbelief. "You're telling me that a single human cargo ship has somehow transcended physics?" Thexera's voice carried the authority of someone who had conquered 17 star systems. "Admiral, your report sounds like the ravings of a damaged mind." "Supreme Commander, I'm transmitting our sensor data now," Kethvar replied from his position near the dimensional distortion. "The human vessel is approaching your position at speeds that shouldn't be possible. It's moving through space like space doesn't exist." Thexera examined the data stream, her confidence evaporating as she absorbed impossible readings. The energy signatures were beyond anything in their databases, and the physics violations were so numerous that her science staff was recommending a complete revision of their understanding of reality. "How long until it reaches us?" she asked. "At current velocity, 17 minutes, Kethvar replied. "But Supreme Commander, I don't think distance means the same thing to them anymore." As if summoned by his words, space itself began to ripple around the High Command Center. The Prometheus materialized not from hyperspace, but from the space between spaces, sliding into reality like a knife through silk. The station's defense platforms immediately locked onto the vessel, but their targeting systems couldn't maintain a stable lock. The ship seemed to exist in multiple positions simultaneously. "All defense platforms opened fire," Thexera commanded. The station's weapons discharged in perfect synchronization. Plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, and gravitational disruptors all converging on a human ship. The energy release was sufficient to sterilize a small planet. The attacks passed through Prometheus without effect, as if the ship existed in a different layer of reality. Captain Chen's voice echoed through the station's communication systems, bypassing all security protocols. "Supreme Commander Thexera, I am Captain Sarachin of the United Earthship Prometheus. We need to talk." Your vessel is in violation of Zoltharian space, Thexera replied, struggling to maintain her composure. Surrender immediately or face destruction. Chen's laugh carried no humor. Commander, you fundamentally misunderstood the situation. You're not dealing with a ship anymore. You're dealing with a manifestation of human, given form through dimensional science. We can't be destroyed because we're not entirely here to begin with. Through the station's viewports, Thexera could see the Prometheus beginning to change again. Its hull was becoming transparent, revealing the crew moving through spaces that were larger inside than outside. The laws of geometry were as meaningless to them as the laws of physics. What do you want? Thexera demanded. We want you to understand, Chen replied. Your species has been expanding across the galaxy for centuries, consuming lesser civilizations. You've never encountered resistance that you couldn't overcome with superior firepower. But humanity is different. We don't just adapt to challenges, we transcend them. Commander Zektol's voice suddenly joined the conversation, transmitted from within the transformed vessel. Supreme Commander, they're showing us things. The humans have access to dimensions we never knew existed. Their technology isn't just advanced, it's evolutionary. Zektol, what's your status? Thexera asked. I'm different, Supreme Commander. We all are. The humans aren't holding us prisoner. They're showing us what we could become. What all species could become if they stopped thinking in terms of conquest and started thinking in terms of growth. The Prometheus began to approach the command center, but instead of docking, it began to merge with the station itself. The two structures flowed together like liquid, creating a hybrid architecture that combines Zoltharian engineering with human dimensional science. Stop this, Thexera commanded. You're contaminating our systems. We're not contaminating anything, Chen replied. We're offering you a choice. Your species can continue on its current path, consuming, conquering, destroying, until you eventually encounter something that destroys you in return. Or you can learn to transcend your limitations. Throughout the command center, Zoltharian personnel were experiencing something unprecedented. Human crew members were walking through walls, showing them technical displays that revealed the true nature of reality. They demonstrated how consciousness could shape matter, how it could bend space-time, how cooperation could achieve what force never could. This is madness, Thexera whispered. No, Chen said, her form materializing directly in front of the Supreme Commander. This is evolution. Your species is young, but you're not stupid. You can learn to exist in harmony with the universe instead of trying to dominate it. And if we refuse... Chen's expression grew sad. Then you'll learn why humanity developed the Lazarus Protocol in the first place. Because we've encountered species like yours before, and we've learned that sometimes the only way to preserve life is to demonstrate the futility of trying to destroy it. The merged station began to emit a soft, harmonious tone that resonated through every corridor and chamber. It was the sound of two technologies learning to work together, of consciousness expanding beyond its traditional boundaries. You have a choice to make, Supreme Commander, Chen continued. You can order your fleets to attack humanity's colonies, and we'll show you what happens when an entire species learns to transcend physical limitations. Or you can be the leader who guides her people towards something greater. Thexera looked around her transformed command center, seeing her own personnel working alongside humans who existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. They weren't afraid anymore. They were curious, excited, filled with possibilities she had never imagined. What guarantee do I have that humanity won't use this power to dominate us? She asked. Chen smiled. The same guarantee you gave the 17 species you've conquered. None. But unlike you, we're offering partnership instead of subjugation. We're offering you the chance to become something more than conquerors. The choice that would determine the fate of two civilizations hung in the balance. Supreme Commander Thexera stood in the heart of her transformed command center, surrounded by the impossible fusion of Zoltharian technology and human dimensional science. Her staff worked alongside Captain Chen's transcended crew, learning to navigate interfaces that responded to thought as much as touch. The boundaries between the two species were blurring, not through conquest, but through understanding. Show me, Thexera said finally. Show me what you're offering. Chin nodded, and the walls of the command center became transparent, revealing not space, but the infinite expanse of the dimensional realm the humans had accessed. Countless realities stretched out in all directions, each one containing different possibilities, different versions of the same civilizations making different choices. This is what we discovered when we developed the Lazarus Protocol. Chin explained. Death isn't an ending, it's a transformation. When my crew activated the protocol, we didn't die. We evolved. We became something that exists across multiple dimensions simultaneously. But at what cost? Thexera asked. You're no longer purely human. No, Chin agreed. We're more than human. But we're still human. We still remember what it felt like to be vulnerable, to be afraid, to face extinction. That's why we can offer you this choice instead of simply destroying you, through the dimensional viewing field. Thexera could see other versions of this moment playing out across parallel realities. In some, the Zeltharian Empire chose violence and was systematically dismantled by humanity's impossible weapons. In others, the two species formed an alliance that led to unprecedented scientific advancement. In still others, both civilizations transcended their physical limitations and became something entirely new. You're showing me the future, Thexera realized. We're showing you possibilities, Chin corrected. The future is still yours to choose. Commander Zektal materialized beside them, his form flickering between dimensions. Supreme Commander, I've seen what they're capable of. Our entire fleet couldn't scratch their defenses. But more importantly, I've seen what we could become if we work with them instead of against them. Explain, Thexera ordered. They've shown me scientific principles that make our current technology look like stone tools, Zektal said. But they're not hoarding this knowledge. They're offering to share it freely. They want to help us transcend our limitations just as they transcended theirs. The command center's communication systems activated, showing incoming transmissions from across the Zeltharian Empire. Admiral Kethvar's voice came through first. Supreme Commander, we're receiving reports of human vessels appearing throughout our territory. They're not attacking, they're waiting. Waiting for what? Thexera demanded. For your decision, Chin replied. Every human ship in this sector has been equipped with a dimensional technology. If you choose war, they'll defend themselves with capabilities your military can't comprehend. If you choose peace, they'll share their knowledge and help your people evolve. Thexera's mind raced through the implications. Her empire had been built on military superiority, but that foundation was crumbling. The humans had demonstrated technology that made conventional warfare meaningless. But they were offering something more valuable than conquest, growth. What about the other species we've conquered? She asked. The 17 civilizations under our rule? They're free to choose their own path, Chin said. But we think you'll find that partnership is more effective than domination. When beings work together willingly, they accomplish things that force never could. The dimensional viewing field shifted, showing the current state of human space. Thexera saw thousands of worlds where multiple species lived and worked together, sharing resources and knowledge. The humans weren't ruling over these civilizations. They were growing alongside them. This is what you call the human way? Thexera asked. This is what we call evolution, Chin replied. Your species has the potential to become something magnificent, but first you have to stop trying to take everything by force. A new voice interrupted their conversation. Lieutenant Vexme from the Dominion's Edge was transmitting. Supreme Commander, we're detecting massive energy signatures from the human colonies. They're not weapons, they're construction projects. They're building something enormous. Show me, Thexera ordered. The viewing field shifted again, revealing a sight that took her breath away. Humanity was constructing a massive structure in the space between galaxies, a dimensional gateway that would allow instantaneous travel between any 2 points in the universe. It was a project that would take thousands of years using conventional technology, but the humans were building it in real time by manipulating the fabric of space itself. This is what becomes possible when species work together. Chin explained. When you stop spending resources on conquest and start investing them in creation. Thexera felt something she hadn't experienced in decades. Wonder. The implications were staggering. If the Zoltharian Empire joined this alliance, they could help build wonders that would benefit all sentient life. But if they chose war, they would be destroyed by enemies who had transcended the very concept of destruction. My people will resist this change, she said. We've been warriors for millennia. So were we, Chin replied. But warriors can become protectors. Conquerors can become explorers. It's a choice, not a destiny. The command center fell silent as Thexera considered the weight of her decision. Around her, Zoltharian and human personnel worked together with an efficiency that would have been impossible under the old paradigm. They weren't just coexisting. They were thriving. I need guarantees, Thexera said finally. Protection for my people during transition. Assurance that humanity won't use its power to subjugate us. You have them, Chin said. But more importantly, you'll have the power to protect yourselves. The dimensional technology isn't a weapon, it's a tool. It can be used to create or destroy, to build or tear down. The choice is always yours. Thexera looked out at the infinite possibilities stretching through dimensional space. In one reality, she saw herself as a conqueror remembered only for the destruction she had caused. In another, she saw herself as a pioneer who would help guide two species towards something greater than either could achieve alone. Supreme Commander, Zektul said softly, our people deserve the chance to become more than what we've been. Thexera nodded slowly. Open a channel to all Zoltharian forces. All ships, all stations, all colonies. She took a deep breath. This is Supreme Commander Thexera. By my authority as leader of the Zoltharian Empire, I hereby order the immediate cessation of all hostile actions against human forces. We're going to try something new. Captain Chin smiled, her form becoming more solid as the dimensional barriers between them thinned. Welcome to the future, Supreme Commander. Let's build something beautiful together. The war that had threatened to consume both civilizations ended not with victory or defeat, but with transformation. And in the space between galaxies, the great work continued, built by hands that had learned to reach across dimensions and hearts that had learned to reach across the void between species. Humanity had taught the universe a lesson about the power of transcendence, and the universe would never be the same.